Okay, start na tayo. Ayan.
We are going to be talking about multi-dimensional arrays. Now you definitely want to make sure that you understand arrays up to this point, so make sure you understand what would be called single-dimensional arrays, which is just, array of integers, for example, which I talked about in previous videos. Now that you got that understood, you can move on to multi-dimensional arrays, which are essentially arrays of arrays. So if you need to visualize this, think of it as a table. So originally we thought of an array like such. And we used the completely unique example of student grades, and we had one person's grades in an array like such. Well, with the multi-dimensional array, you can think of the same thing, but now you have multiple students' grades in the same structure, same format, but now you can reference multiple students. So let's say there's just 3 grades for each, or let's go with 4. 4 grades for each student. How would you define this array? So there's 5 students, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each one with 4 grades. And we'll just call it student grades. Make sure you can see this. Okay. It would look something like this. Student grades, and you're going to need 2 square brackets. So the first square bracket refers to the rows. So how many rows are there? The answer is 5. The next one is how many columns, this way, which there's 4, so there's going to be 4 grades. Beautiful. So this would give us this structure, which we can visualize in our head as such. But if you wanted to reference a specific row or a specific column, then you need to think, what are we going to put when we're referencing it? We're going to put student grades, and then we're going to put something here and something here. So for example, let's say we wanted to reference this cube, or this cell, I guess you could say, right here. Well, here's what the code would look like. So we already declare our array. And the way you would declare it is you would first give it a type. You already declare our array. And the way you would declare it is you would first give it a type, int student grades, semicolon. And then you could assign each value individually, or you could use the other syntax which I showed you in the single arrays, which would be to set it equal to curly braces. And then inside of the curly braces, you would define each row with curly braces. So you do something like this, comma, another set, so that's curly brace, 2, 3, 4, 8. These students did really bad because the grades are out of 100. Comma, and you can do that for each row. So once you declare it, how do you go and reference one of the cells? That's what I want to show you guys now. So I'm going to get rid of this, and also get rid of the type. So now we're trying to reference one cell. And we're going to use the same, similar structure. We just have to think. It's really important that you understand the data types and just what to call things. So if you just have, let me get rid of this. If you just have student grades by itself, this is a multi-dimensional array. It's a 2D array of integers. Now, if you have student grades with a number, that is a single-dimensional array, 1 row right here. So that's a single-dimensional array. So if you had a function or something that required a single-dimensional array, you could pass in a row like that. Now, if you add another square, 0, 2, 2 would be this one right here. That's an integer. So you can use that anywhere an integer is expected. Just so you guys can understand the different data types, you might want to practice some of that. Now the last thing is, just wanted to clarify that this is not the limit. You could have a 3-dimensional array, which you could visualize as a cube if you needed. And you can have a 4-dimensional array, and so forth. So thank you guys. Hopefully that was a good introduction to multi-dimensional arrays. Obviously this is very conceptual here. The next video we're going to get hands-on and create some of our own. So please be sure to check that out, guys. I'm sure it'll be helpful for you. And as always, be sure to subscribe. And one thing I wanted to mention, you guys, is that I actually am working on a C programming crash course, which if you would like to consider donating a fixed amount of money in exchange for some goods, aka...
Okay.
You see,
Hello
Another one.
everyone, this is your video on multi-dimensional arrays. I would definitely encourage you to check out the previous videos on single-dimensional arrays, as well as the video introducing multi-dimensional arrays. Now we're going to get some hands-on practice with it. But before we get started, I just want to do a quick shout out to my C programming crash course. I think it's something you guys would all be interested in, so check out the links in the description if that's something you might find useful. So when we create a single-dimensional array, we say what type it is, and give it a name, and then use these square brackets. And then you can put some values in here. And that is how you create a single-dimensional array. Multi-dimensional array is very similar. You still only use one type. So every single value is going... And that is how you create a single-dimensional array. Multi-dimensional array is very similar. You still only use one type. So every single value is going to be of the same type. So this one up here, this might be one person's grades for 3 assignments. So now we want to store multiple people's grades for the 3 assignments. So we need to use 2 square bracket groups, and then we can assign the same way. So it's going to look something like this. I like to format it so it looks like a table. So this is the first student. And then this is going to be the second student, who's a little bit smarter than the other one. Alright, so this is actually not going to compile, and this is an interesting thing that I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe one of you guys can help. So when I said to make a single-dimensional array, I said don't put the size here. But when you're making a 2-dimensional array, it actually wants you to put the size. Specifically, you only need the size right here, which is the number of columns. So you could put a 3 here, and that would work just fine. But I don't know why that's like that. I don't know why it can't just say, oh, there's 3 columns. That means we should just give a size of 3. But apparently it has to have the size. And generally when I do that, I prefer to have a variable so we could have a column variable set to 3. And if you're going to do this, you actually need to have the const keyword here in order for it to work. Like so. Now it should compile, and we can actually access any of these elements fairly simply. So for example, let's say we wanted to access this 89. Well, what we would do is we would say grades, and the first square bracket is going to talk about the row. So this is row index 0, this is row index 1. So we would say 1, and then we're going to do another set of square brackets. And this is going to be the column. So index 0, index 1, index 2. Right there. Now let's compile this and just make sure it works and run it. 89. So it works. That's how you access a particular element. And this is just a normal integer, meaning you can change it, doing the same thing. So now I'm going to print it before, change it, and then print it after. 89, 30. So that's how that works. Now, I wanted to talk about how we print all of the values of a multi-dimensional array. And you're actually going to need 2 for loops, so a nested for loop. The outer for loop is going to go through the rows, then the inner for loop is going to go through the columns. So it's going to look something like this. Now we need the number of rows, and actually don't have this hard-coded, so just for clarity, let's do that. So now as long as I is less than rows, and you could put rows here if you wanted, it doesn't need it there though, so I'm not going to put it there. Okay, now that's going to cycle through the rows. Now for each row, we need to print every single column value, so we need another for loop. Now typically, you'll use another variable, either j or k. So you could say int j is equal to 0, and then j is less than columns, j++. So now within here, we can use these variables as the indexes for our array to access each element individually. So basically it's going to go I0, and then for every I0 it's going to go J0, 1, 2, and then I is going to go to 1, it's going to go 0, 1, 2. If that made no sense, then just print it out, you'll understand. It's hard to explain this kind of stuff sometimes. So the first one is going to be I, and then the next one is going to be J. Okay, we have a little issue. Oh, here's the issue. We need to change it to grades, and that's a lowercase g, not my grades. So grades was the single array up here. I'm going to get rid of that. And it prints out all the values. It looks a little funky because this printf here is still there. We need to get rid of that. I was looking at it, I was like, what is going on? It's not working. But it's working. It's just not looking right. There we go. 12, 23, 45, 64, 78, 89. Now, if you want to print it out as a table, after each row you need to print a new line. Like that. And that is how you print a multi-dimensional array. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Please be sure to subscribe if you've been enjoying this series, and let me know what other kind of content you'd like me to cover. Thank you guys, I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, so that's a little review on array. Now, before we proceed to yung activity natin na we'll do programming exercises. Okay, linisin ko lang yung mga kailangan ko para sa ano, no. So, na-explain ko na sa inyo yung presentation. Okay? Naka-ano ba ako? Stop sharing. Naka-full sharing ba ako? Dali. Para ma-set up na yan. Hindi ko na siya iisipin. So, next, sa Sabado, yung X na yung ituturo ko. Pang sarado. Pang last, no? Entire share. Check ko lang kung napaliwanag ko na yung ating template. So, nalagay ko na yung template sa GC. Nakita ko siya. Okay. Downloads. Project presentation. Okay. Project presentation template. So, ito yung template ng project. Close ko lang yung isa dahil yan ay sa website. Don't save. So, okay. I think isa-isahin ko lang yung presentation. Q&A. O, diba? Maiksi lang. Okay. Maiksi lang. So, dito sa ating project presentation 4, no? Sino yung, bigyan nyo ng pangalan yung grupo nyo. Hindi. Isa pala. Isang tao lang pala kayo. So, ano yung name nung gumawa ng system? Ano pangalan ng system? Ayan, no? Okay? And then, project description. Isang short paragraph nung inyong ginawa. Or pwedeng sentence. Kasi kung simple-simple lang. So, isang simpleng description lang nung inyong ginawang project, no? Ito yung scope. Ano yung kailangan nyong matapos. Ano yung purpose or business theme ng inyong project. Sino yung inyong ine-expect na magiging user. Ayan. Sagutin nyo lang yung tanong. And then, dito sa objective, we have two objectives, technical and schedule. Doon sa ating technical, produce an app. It's either a system or a game in C. Ayan. And then sa schedule, within 6 months, scheduled learning, production of an app using C, no? Ayan. Deliverables, pakilagay dito yung pangalan ng inyong system. Okay. And then implementation. Okay, ano yung mga activities na ginawa ninyo, mga task, no? So tayo ay ang ginawa nating activities ay namili kayo ng gagawin yung system. Tapos design ninyo. Ayan. Dinesign nyo kung paano siya gagawin. Syempre kasama sa documentation na andyan yung design, which is yung flowchart, no? Ayan. Tapos nag-code. So yan yung mga activities, nag-code at natapos, no? At i-present. Ayan. Ano yung procedure? Yung process natin. Yung process ng ng pagkakagawa ng system. So dito lilitaw yung para katulad nito class. Dito sa natin, no? Halimbawa dito sa pili tayo ng isang yung process, halimbawa itong number 1. I think nagawa na natin tong number 1. So yung process meron to sa babang ayan, ito yung process, no? Yung flowchart, no? Mula dun sa unang variable, pababa, no? Sa inyo naman, mula sa step 1, step 2, sa start, hanggang sa magawa yung system, kung ano yung pinoproduce ng system, and then mag-end. Depende kung paano siya mag-end, no? Ayan. So, yun yung process, no?
Ito pala.
So, ang maganda dito, okay, pwede nyong ilagay sa isang file yung isang buong process, naka-flowchart. Tapos, from here, no, yung word na process, bigyan nyo na lang siya ng hyperlink. Ayan. Hyperlink. Tapos, kung image yung flowchart, ayan, hanapin nyo kung saan nakasave yung image, then pwede nyo ipakita yung buong process, no? Ng inyong system, no? Yan yung design, no? Yan. And then, tools na ginamit, C. Tapos, okay, project change, control process, naka-scrum tayo. So, I think na-explain ko na sa inyo dati yung ibig sabihin ng ng scrum, na kada gawa, pag may binago, i-iterate. Ayan, ganun, no? So, naka-scrum tayo. Hindi tayo naka-waterfall. So, yung isa, yung waterfall, yung standard na susunod ka dun sa SDLC, yung pagkakasunod-sunod. Hindi tayo ganun, no? Tayo ay nag-code agad, at kung may problema, i-iterate. Ayan, so, mabilisan, no? Yan yung scrum. Yan yung ginamit natin na process. Okay? Naintindihan ba tong part na to dun sa process? Yung
Yes,
process, i-highlight nyo
Yes,
lang.
po.
Tapos, i-right click nyo dun sa hyperlink. Ilagay nyo yung hanapin nyo dun sa, halimbawa kung saan nyo isinave, yung image, no? Para pagka, pwede nyo siyang i-click habang ipine-present, then makikita yung pinaka flowchart ng inyong system, no? Ganon. Ayan. Okay. And then, dito sa project presentation, no? Bigyan nyo ng maganda gawan nyo ng logo. Ito, no? Lagyan nyo ng pangalan at saka logo yung inyong ginawa, no? Kung yan ay tic-tac-toe, so meron akong itsura ng tic-tac-toe dito, no? Yan yung sample natin. Tapos, nakasave yan sa inyong system. Okay? I-right click natin. Ito, meron na siyang hyperlink, sige. Meron na palang hyperlink dito. So, kanino ang naka dito? Ayan. Okay. Ayan. So, kunyari lang yan, So, eto na ba yun? Video ba to? Or exe. Exe na siya talaga, press start the game, press S. Ayun. Oo nga, tumatakbo na siya, Ayan. B, to reset, a score. Okay, ayan. So, yung maganda yung ganon, teka, video pala to. Akala ko naman naniwala na ako, So, instead na, itong sample ko kasi, pwedeng dito, escape.